6th, 1944, 13:30 hours, Berchtesgaden, Bavaria. In the map room of the Berghof, Adolf Hitler's mountain retreat, a single telephone call shattered the illusion that Fortress Europe remained impregnable. The message was brief, delivered in the clipped tones of a staff officer whose voice portrayed carefully suppressed panic. Mein Führer. The Allies have established beachheads in Normandy. They are not withdrawing. For 9 hours, while American, British, and Canadian forces stormed 5 beaches along the Norman coast, the Supreme Commander of Nazi Germany had slept. His staff, paralyzed by standing orders never to wake him and terrified of his legendary rages, had watched the invasion reports accumulate like death sentences. When Hitler finally emerged at 1300 hours, requesting his customary late breakfast, he entered a world that had fundamentally transformed while he dreamed. What followed in the hours and days after D-Day was not merely a military defeat, but a catastrophic failure of intelligence, command structure, and strategic reality. The German High Command's reaction to the Allied invasion revealed the fatal flaws in Nazi military doctrine. Flaws that would turn the greatest amphibious assault in history from a potential disaster into an unstoppable avalanche that would crush the Third Reich within 11 months. The German defensive posture along the Atlantic Wall represented 3 years of military construction and strategic debate that had consumed the Wehrmacht's senior leadership. By June 1944, Nazi Germany had constructed what propaganda minister Josef Goebbels proclaimed as an impregnable barrier stretching from Norway to the Spanish border. 15,000 fortifications, 6.5 million mines, and 500,000 obstacles designed to shred any invasion force before it could establish a foothold on continental Europe. But behind this facade of strength lay a command structure fractured by competing egos, contradictory strategies, and a dictator whose interference in military operations had grown increasingly erratic. The fundamental disagreement centered on a single question: where should German forces meet the Allied invasion? Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, appointed Inspector of Coastal Defenses in November 1943, had studied the lessons of North Africa and Italy. His conclusion contradicted traditional German mobile warfare doctrine. The war will be won or lost on the beaches, Rommel had written in his assessment to OKW, the Armed Forces High Command. We must stop the enemy in the water, destroy him before he sets foot on land. If he establishes a beachhead, our cause is lost. Rommel's strategy demanded concentrating panzer divisions within striking distance of the coast, specifically positioning them close enough to counterattack within hours of any landing. He had witnessed Allied air superiority in North Africa and understood that daylight movement of armored formations would be suicidal. The panzers needed to be close, ready to strike before Allied forces could consolidate. Field Marshal Ger von Rundstedt, Commander and Chief West, held the opposite view. A traditionalist who had commanded armies since before Hitler came to power, Rundstedt believed in the classic German mobile defense. Let them land, he had argued in staff meetings throughout spring 1944. Let them extend themselves inland away from naval gunfire support. Then we destroy them with concentrated panzer counterattacks in the interior where our armor can maneuver freely. This strategic paralysis meant German armored reserves were positioned neither for Rommel's immediate coastal defense nor for Rundstedt's inland counter-offensive. Instead, they sat in compromised positions that satisfied no coherent strategy. The 21st Panzer Division near Caen could potentially reach invasion beaches within hours, but the critical 12th SS Panzer Division sat 95 kilometers southeast, and the Panzer Lehr Division was stationed 125 kilometers from the coast near Chartres. Worse still, Hitler had personally reserved control of these strategic reserves. Standing orders required his explicit authorization before panzer divisions could move to contact. This meant that even as Allied paratroopers descended on Norman fields in the pre-dawn hours of June 6th, German commanders with tanks within striking distance could only watch and wait for permission that would not come for crucial hours. The intelligence failure compounded the command paralysis. German intelligence services had fractured into competing organizations. The Abwehr under Admiral Eker Wilhelm Canaris, the Sicherheitsdienst under Walter Schellenberg, and Foreign Armies West under Colonel Alexis von. Each produced assessments that contradicted the others, and all had been penetrated by Allied deception operations. Operation Fortitude, the Allied deception plan, had convinced German intelligence that the Normandy landings were merely a feint. The real invasion, they believed, would come at Pale, the narrowest point of the English Channel, where the fictional 1st United States Army Group under General George Patton supposedly waited to strike. German intelligence estimates placed Allied strength in Britain at 89 divisions when actual strength was 47. More critically, they believed 50 divisions remained in southeastern England poised for the real invasion. This intelligence assessment meant that even as reports flooded in from Normandy on June 6th, German High Command remained convinced they were witnessing a diversionary attack. The 15th Army, Germany's strongest force with 19 divisions, sat immobile near Clay throughout D-Day, waiting to repel an invasion that existed only in German imagination and Allied radio traffic. The weather had also played its role in German complacency. Meteorologists had predicted storms making amphibious operations impossible for several days. Rommel himself had departed for Germany on June 5th, planning to celebrate his wife's birthday on June 6th before continuing to Berchtesgaden to petition Hitler for additional panzer divisions. Multiple division and corps commanders, coast. Fire control systems had been refined through Mediterranean operations, allowing ships to provide accurate supporting fire for inland advances up to 20 km cleared from the coast. The coordination between air, naval, and ground forces represented operational integration that Wehrmacht doctrine had never achieved. Forward air controllers accompanying assault troops could request airstrikes on specific targets within minutes. Naval gunfire liaison teams directed ship bombardment with unprecedented accuracy. This combined arms approach, coordinated through reliable radio communications and supported by detailed pre-invasion planning, created a system that could adapt to battlefield developments in real time. The first coherent reports reaching German High Command came not through official channels but through frantic radio transmissions from coastal observation posts beginning at 0200 hours on June 6th. Lieutenant Colonel Friedrich August Freer von Dietz, commanding the 6th Pfalz Schmager Regiment, transmitted from his position near SM Marie Eglin. Massive parachute drops occurring across entire sector. Estimate battalion strength minimum. Request immediate reinforcement. At 0300 hours, the 716th Infantry Division headquarters in Normandy reported to 7th Army Command. Paratroop landings confirmed across multiple zones. Communications disrupted. Heavy bombing of coastal positions ongoing. The message reached General Friedrich Dollmann, commanding 7th Army, who faced the paralyzing dilemma of Hitler's standing orders. He could not commit armored reserves without authorization from Bestaden. The critical failure occurred between 0400 and 0630 hours. As dawn broke over the Norman coast and the largest armada in human history materialized offshore, German commanders with divisions capable of reaching the beaches within hours could only watch through binoculars and request permission to move. Major General Edgar Fudinger, commanding the 21st Panzer Division, stationed just 15 km from the coast, received reports of British glider landings near his headquarters at 0230 hours. His panzers could have reached Sword Beach before the first British troops waded ashore. His requests to engage were denied pending authorization from above. At 0600 hours, as American forces began their assault on Omaha Beach under murderous fire from the 352nd Infantry Division, General Alfred Jodl, Hitler's Chief of Operations Staff, refused to wake the Führer. The situation is unclear, Jodl told staff officers requesting authorization to release panzer reserves. We must wait for better intelligence before disturbing the Führer with preliminary reports. The turning point came at 10 hours when Major General Willem Richter, commanding the 716th Infantry Division defending Gold and Juno beaches, transmitted his final coherent report. Enemy has achieved penetration at multiple points. Positions overrun. Cannot hold without immediate armored support. Situation critical. The transmission ended abruptly as British forces overran his headquarters bunker near Cosul su Mare. Hitler finally received his briefing at 13:30 hours, 9.5 hours after the first paratroops landed. According to testimony from Generals Jodl and Wilhelm Kiel recorded at Nuremberg trials, Hitler's first reaction was dismissive. This is the diversion we expected. The real invasion comes at Kala. We hold the reserves for the main attack. When Field Marshal Geir von Rundstedt requested immediate release of the 12th SS Panzer and Panzer divisions at 1400 hours, Hitler authorized only limited movement. One division to move toward Caen. The others remain in position to counter the Kala invasion. This single decision effectively surrendered the battle. The 21st Panzer Division, finally authorized to attack at 1500 hours, advanced toward the British beachhead, but encountered the full weight of Allied naval gunfire. Captain Wilhelm von Gottberg, commanding the division's 22nd Panzer Regiment, later testified that concentrated naval bombardment destroyed 40% of his armor before reaching the coast. By 1600 hours, the situation reports painted a picture of catastrophe. The 352nd Infantry Division on Omaha Beach, which had fought magnificently throughout the morning, reported ammunition critically low, casualties exceeding 50%. American forces advancing inland cannot hold positions beyond nightfall. Colonel Walter Korfest, commanding Artillery Regiment 352, transmitted at 1645 hours, observed ships extending to horizon. This is no diversion. Request permission withdraw to secondary positions. Permission was denied. At 1730 hours, German commanders received the intelligence assessment they had dreaded. Luftwaffe reconnaissance flying one of the few sortieses managed that day. Confirmed Allied ships numbering in the thousands. The pilot's report was stark. Invasion fleet extends across 50-men front. Estimate 4,000 plus vessels. Continuous landing operations, all beaches. This is the main invasion. Field Marshal Rommel, racing back from Germany, did not reach his headquarters at La Rhone until 2200 hours. His chief of staff, General Hans Speidel, briefed him on the day's disasters. According to Speidel's post-war testimony, Rommel's response was immediate and devastating. The war is lost. We have lost the decisive battle. Everything I warned about has come to pass. The final crushing blow came through radio intercepts. At 23:15 hours, German listening posts recorded massive radio traffic from southeastern England, the Phantom 1st U.S. Army group that supposedly awaited the Kala invasion. Intelligence officers reported to OKW. Fusg remains in England. No signs of movement towards embarkation. Normandy may be the Swerpun main effort. But this realization came 17 hours too late. By midnight on June 6th, 156,000 Allied troops occupied French soil across 5 beachheads, extending 24 miles along the coast and penetrating up to 6 miles inland. The Atlantic Wall, 3 years in construction, had been breached in a single day. More critically, the window for immediate armored counterattack, the crucial first 24 hours when beachheads remain vulnerable, had closed while German commanders waited for authorization that came too late and remained convinced they faced a deception. The psychological collapse within German High Command manifested not in a single moment, but through a cascade of realizations that accumulated across June 7th through 12th. Each day brought fresh intelligence that contradicted fundamental assumptions upon which German defensive strategy had been built. and each revelation further paralyzed an already dysfunctional command structure. June 7th, D-11, 800 hours. Intelligence. Summaries confirmed that Allied forces had successfully linked 4 of 5 beachheads. Only Omaha remained partially separated from adjacent beaches. Worse still, reconnaissance flights, the few that survived overwhelming Allied air superiority, reported construction of artificial harbor facilities already beginning off the Norman coast. General Gunther Blumentritt, Chief of Staff to von Rundstedt, recorded in his daily log, "The artificial harbors confirm this is no raid. Enemy intends sustained operations from Normandy. Our entire strategic assessment was flawed. The 15th Army, Germany's strongest force with 19 divisions, remained frozen near Kalle on June 7th, awaiting the real invasion. Hitler and OKW intelligence continued to believe Normandy was diversionary. But field commanders witnessing the buildup firsthand knew differently. Lieutenant General Hans von Salmuth, commanding 15th Army, sent increasingly urgent requests. Normandy fighting requires immediate reinforcement. Request authorization to move divisions south. Each request was denied. The Phantom Army that existed, only in German imagination, held Germany's most powerful force immobile while Normandy burned. By June 8th, the psychological impact extended beyond operational paralysis to something more fundamental. A crisis of confidence in German military leadership. Field commanders who had faithfully executed Hitler's orders for 5 years began questioning whether orders from Burgkotten reflected battlefield reality. Colonel General Friedrich Dollmann, commanding 7th Army, suffered what medical officers termed nervous exhaustion. His chief of staff effectively assumed command while Dollmann remained in his quarters unable to function. The statistics accumulated like successive hammer blows to German morale. By June 10th, Allied forces had landed 326,000 troops, 54,000 vehicles, and 104,000 tons of supplies. German reinforcements attempting to reach Normandy faced systematic destruction. The 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich moving from southern France required 17 days to cover 450 kilometers, a journey that should have taken 3 days. Allied air power transformed every daylight movement into a death trap. Division Commander SS Brigadier Foder Heinz Lamding reported, losing 1,500 men and 130 vehicles before reaching the battle zone. The railway interdiction campaign revealed the depth of Allied planning. Systematic bombing had destroyed 76 of 80 railway bridges over the S River. Reinforcements from Germany had to detour hundreds of miles, then moved by night through secondary roads where French resistance fighters harassed every column. The 275th Infantry Division required 12 days to move from Brittany to the front, a distance of 150 miles. Radio intercepts revealed the psychological disintegration among German field commanders. On June 11th, Signals Intelligence recorded a transmission from an unnamed regimental commander to division headquarters. "My men ask why the Luftwaffe does not come, why our panzers do not arrive. I have no answer that they believe. Morale is critical." Such communications had been unthinkable in previous campaigns. The command crisis reached its breaking point on June 12th when Rommel and von Rundstedt requested a meeting with Hitler to advocate strategic withdrawal from Normandy to more defensible positions. According to testimony at post-war trials, both field marshals arrived at Berchtesgaden prepared to explain why current strategy courted disaster. Hitler refused to see them together, receiving each separately to prevent unified opposition to his directives. When RML outlined the situation, overwhelming Allied air superiority, inadequate reinforcements reaching the front, unsustainable casualties, and deteriorating morale, Hitler's response revealed his complete detachment from battlefield reality. According to Rommel's chief of staff, who debriefed the field marshal afterward, Hitler declared, "You must hold every meter, no withdrawal." New weapons will turn the tide. When Rommel pressed for details about these weapons, Hitler spoke vaguely of jets and rockets that would soon devastate Allied forces. Von Rundstedt's separate meeting produced similar results. When he outlined the strategic necessity of creating mobile reserves by shortening defensive lines, Hitler responded with accusations of defeatism. According to Vanette's testimony at Nuremberg, Hitler stated, "The Atlantic Wall must be held. Any commander who speaks of withdrawal is dismissed." The psychological impact extended to German soldiers witnessing the material disparity firsthand. Captured documents and prisoner interrogation revealed troops comparing their situation to the Eastern Front's worst moments. A letter from an unafeer of the 356th Infantry Division intercepted by Allied intelligence stated, "We fight well, but it means nothing. For every shell we fire, they fire 50. For every plane we see, they have hundreds. This is not war, this is extermination by industrial production." By June 12th, German casualties in Normandy exceeded 26,000 men killed, wounded, or captured. Allied casualties total 52,000, but their replacement system delivered fresh troops daily, while German reinforcements never arrived in sufficient numbers. More significantly, the Wehrmacht had lost irreplaceable formations. Elite Panzer and parachute divisions committed piecemeal to counterattacks were being systematically destroyed without achieving operational objectives. The failure of German High Command's response to D-Day represented more than tactical defeat. It exposed the fundamental contradictions within Nazi military structure that would characterize the Reich's collapse over the following 11 months. The decisions, made between June 6 and June 12, 1944, created a template of dysfunction that would repeat across every subsequent crisis until final surrender in May 1945. Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel, chief of OKW, testified at Nuremberg that D-Day revealed what senior commanders had privately understood but never openly acknowledged. The Führer's military judgment had become detached from operational reality. His refusal to authorize tactical withdrawals, his insistence on holding every position, his belief in wonder weapons rather than sound strategy. These cost us the war in the West before summer ended. The command paralysis that kept German armor immobile during D-Day's crucial first 24 hours was not an aberration but the logical result of Hitler's centralization of military authority. General Gunther Blumenried, analyzing the campaign post-war for U.S. military historians, explained, "A corporal commanded field marshals. Local commanders who understood battlefield conditions could not act. Distant commanders who could authorize action did not understand conditions. This gap between authority and knowledge proved fatal." The statistical evidence confirmed the catastrophic nature of German defeat. By June 30th, less than a month after the invasion, German casualties in Normandy exceeded 80,000 men killed, wounded, or captured. 8 divisions had been destroyed as effective fighting forces. The Panzer Division, one of Germany's elite armored formations, reported on June 29th that it retained only 40 operational tanks from an initial strength of 190. Its commander, General Fritz Berlin, transmitted, "My division is finished, can no longer conduct offensive operations." More significantly, Germany's strategic situation had become untenable. The two-front war that German military planners had warned Hitler against in 1941 now consumed German forces at unsustainable rates. In June 1944 alone, Wehrmacht casualties across all fronts exceeded 450,000. 150,000 in the West, 300,000 in the East. Germany's monthly tank production averaged 670 units. The Soviet Union produced 2,000. American industry produced 2,100. The mathematics of industrial warfare had become undeniable. The psychological impact on German field commanders manifested in unprecedented ways. On July 17th, Allied fighter bombers strafed Rommel's staff car, severely wounding the field marshal, who had warned Hitler that Normandy's loss meant losing the war in the West. On July 20th, Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg's bomb exploded in Hitler's conference room at Rastenburg, the most serious of multiple assassination attempts by military officers who concluded Germany's only hope lay in removing Hitler and negotiating armistice with the Western Allies. The conspiracy involved dozens of senior Wehrmacht officers, including Field Marshal von Witzben, General Ludwig Beck, and numerous others who had concluded Hitler's leadership guaranteed Germany's destruction. The plot's failure and subsequent executions of over 5,000 suspected conspirators, including Rommel, forced to commit suicide, in October further paralyzed German military effectiveness. Surviving commanders understood that questioning orders now invited execution. General Dwight Eisenhower, Supreme Allied Commander, wrote in his post-war memoir, Crusade in Europe, German High Command's failure to commit armored reserves on D-Day remains one of history's decisive command failures. Had D. Those panzers struck our beaches in the first 24 hours. While we remained vulnerable, the outcome might have been vastly different. Their hesitation gave us the foothold that nothing could then dislodge. Military historians analyzing German command decisions identified multiple interconnected failures. The intelligence disaster, believing Normandy was diversionary, stemmed from Hitler's tendency to accept intelligence, confirming his preconceptions while dismissing contradictory evidence. The command paralysis requiring Hitler's authorization for operational decisions reflected his distrust of professional military officers. The strategic inflexibility refusing tactical withdrawals to create mobile reserves represented his belief that willpower could overcome material disadvantage. Soviet Marshal Georgy Zhukov, speaking to historians in 1966, offered the Eastern Front perspective. D-Day forced Germany to fight the two-front war we needed them to fight. But more importantly, it demonstrated that Hitler would interfere in military operations even when such interference guaranteed defeat. This we had already learned in 1941 to 1943. The Western Allies learned it in 1944. Hitler's greatest gift to us was his refusal to let competent commanders command. The Allied assessment completed by Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force in September 1944 concluded German defensive doctrine proved sound. German fortifications were formidable. German soldiers fought courageously, but German command structure was dysfunctional. German intelligence was catastrophically flawed, and German strategic leadership was divorced from operational reality. These institutional failures, not Allied superiority in courage or tactical skill, decided Normandy's outcome. The final accounting revealed the scale of German disaster. By September 1st, when Allied forces liberated Paris and reached the German border, Wehrmacht losses in the West totaled over 500,000 casualties. 28 divisions had been destroyed. Germany had lost France, its Atlantic Wall, and, most critically, the strategic initiative. From D-Day forward, Germany fought a defensive war of retreat that could end only in unconditional surrender. The beaches of Normandy, where German High Command's failure crystallized into catastrophe, demonstrated the ultimate truth of industrial age warfare. Victory requires not merely brave soldiers and strong fortifications, but also coherent command structures, accurate intelligence, flexible doctrine, and above all, strategic leadership grounded in operational reality rather than ideological fantasy. On all these measures, German High Command failed comprehensively on D-Day, ensuring that the 1,000-year Reich would endure only 11 more months.